welcome, Andy Scott. So I'm going to let the rest of the guys know why I've got you on. So in terms of your background, no need to bang your own drum because I'll do the singing for you. So 25 years in sales, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Successful teams in various industries, both in the field and also telesales as well.
Yeah.
Ran your own sales companies, and now you're a consultant trainer for the last couple of years and run your own sales training business. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell, mate. Yeah.
Good. I know you've said to me before, it's a pretty much a lifelong passion is sales and the psychology behind it as well. So the reason I got you on, mate, and just for the sake of the others as well, is obviously we connected, had a little bit of a chat, got on with each other, and you were sharing some really interesting stuff to the point where I was like, I want some of my guys and network to hear this stuff as well. And we were discussing various things, but the one that really struck a chord with me was this second order thinking. Yeah. So for the sake of the rest of the guys, Andy was probably more up for doing a little bit of a more level overview and I suppose more top level stuff as a holistic approach than anything else. But I kind of twisted your arm into this one, didn't I? Because I thought it was interesting. I wanted you to share it with the guys. So second order thinking. I'll leave the rest to you, mate. The floor's yours. Welcome.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, no, listen, I appreciate our conversations, Rich. And you know, the thing is, like everything, you know, sometimes everything starts with a conversation, and when you have a conversation that sparks some interest in somebody, then it's sometimes worth taking that to its natural conclusion. So if you can all see the slides, welcome to second order thinking. So second order thinking, in a nutshell, is where we don't think about the immediate results of our plans, of our actions, of the things that we do and we're going to do. We think about the end results. And it's not the way that most people on the planet tend to think. Now, if you think about the people that may need to have a really strong second order thinking, you might not necessarily jump to the conclusion of drug dealers. But believe it or not, second order thinking was brought to the populace by a very successful Welsh international drug dealer. And he was called Howard Marks, and he released a book called The Most Important Thing. And he was renowned for being able to move up to 30 tons of cannabis through borders, like with remarkable success. You can't do things like this by just thinking, what's the immediate problem I've got to solve, which is buy 30 tons of cannabis. You know, you've got to think, what am I going to do? You know, where am I going to hide it? So his thought process, when he eventually got caught and then came out of prison, he took that into business. He became a very successful business owner, investor, and author. And a lot of the success he had was based on how he had to approach the world of solving problems around moving copious amounts of drugs. So it might not have come from, you might have thought it was Socrates or somebody like that, but not quite as romantic as that. So second order thinking, ultimately second order thinking, the reason I like it is 95% of people tend to think about the immediate problems I've got to solve. We tend to be animals that look at solving the immediate pressure first. And the immediate pressure can be, I've got to topple the first block, and what happens when I topple the first block? So I will think about what needs to be done. I'll think about what's liable to happen after I push that first block over. What I don't always think about, as most of us do, is what happens when the last block falls. Who's still standing when the last block falls? What does the world look like when the last block falls in this scenario? So with the absolute best intentions, and the best will in the world, we tend to make decisions, like I said, based on immediate pressure, something that is a business necessity or pressure put on us by a manager. And we've got to get this monkey off our back. So we tend to think about, okay, what do I need to do to get rid of this monkey? And that's what we go absolutely then flat out to try and resolve. And it tends to, again, revolve around this first block being tipped over, which is going to solve the immediate issue. The problem is that there's lots and lots of things that can happen that you put into play after that first block tumbles. So we're all under huge pressure, and the pressure comes from all different places. It might come from sales targets, from problems that you've got to solve, from decisions that have to be made that don't feel easy. And what we really want to do is just relieve that immediate pressure. And again, we do this by thinking, you know, what's the thing that I can do right now to make this better right now? And whilst that might work for a short period of time, the knock-on effect of that, you know, can be absolutely huge. And part of the reason that we think the way we think and we make the decisions the way we make them is down to what we call decision-making biases. Now, we live in an extremely noisy world. You know, the rate of change now, if I think back to when I was a kid, if you had a bag of marbles and an Action Man, you could play with anybody. You know, you could be anybody's friend with a bag of marbles and an Action Man. You know, and then even just, you know, 15 years ago when my kids were at school, if they didn't wear the right trainers, if they didn't have the right game on the day that it was released, they had no currency for the world. You know, it's a noisy world full of pressures that quite often are not what they should be, but they are anyway. And we've had to learn how to get through this world with all of its noise. And the human animals now come up with about 130 different biases that it applies to get through the world easier. A lot of these biases are conscious, a lot of them are subconscious biases. But we apply them as shortcuts to our decision making and shortcuts to the world, because we can't think about every situation that comes our way to the nth degree all the time. But what we've done is we've taken it to the opposite side, and we tend to quite often let our decision making biases make the decisions for us without question. So there's two that I want to sort of touch on that fall into this quite nicely. And the first one is something called confirmation bias. And as a human being, part of the human condition is hating to be wrong. And I hate to be wrong. I hate to be proved wrong. You know, and even if you prove me wrong, I'll still probably argue about it for the next 20 minutes because that's built into us. Yeah. So confirmation bias is a convenient thing that we use where we get given the evidence and facts of a situation. We then overlap that with our belief systems to how we think this situation should work and what we should do about it. And then we selectively take the evidence in the middle that backs up our already preconceived idea, yeah, and makes us feel that it's right to go ahead with it. It's completely natural. It's part of the human condition, you know, but it's extremely dangerous. The confirmation bias can be hugely problematic. The second one that I want to touch on is something called quick perception bias. And this is dangerous for all sorts of different reasons. And this is where we simply see a situation, we believe we understand it, yeah, and then we take action based on our previous experience of that situation. But, you know, for one person, that's a 6, for another person, it's a 9. And it's the same in so many situations. And I try and demonstrate this in a couple of different ways when I do training sessions. And one of the things that I tend to do within a couple of slides of the first time I meet a team is I ask them to be open-minded. Yeah, and in order to do this, to challenge what they think they understand. And I'll say to them, I've got a question I'm going to ask you. And once I've asked this question, you've got 5 seconds to come up with the answer. So, and I pop up a slide of the ark. And my question is, how many animals to the nearest 20 did Moses load onto the ark? Yeah, and I say, you've got 5 seconds, and I count to 5. And people then, at the end of 5, have got an answer. And I'll go around and people will give me this number, that number, whatever else. And then I say, it might surprise you to know I know the exact answer to this, because the exact answer is 0, because Moses did not load the ark, Noah did. But because it's presented to you in a simple format that you believe you understand, you take immediate action on it, because your brain goes, I understand this. Yeah, and I might not know the correct answer exactly, but I know how to take action on it. And that is quick perception bias. The second way that I try and demonstrate this is I take a child's shape sorter into a training situation and I put it on the table and I'll say, put your hand up if you can solve this puzzle. And everybody puts their hand up and I go, of course you can solve this puzzle. It's built for a 2-year-old. I go, but who can solve it the fastest? And the really competitive people have got their hands up, you know, and I'll go, right, okay. So I'll put it in front of somebody, I'll tip the shapes out and I'll start the stopwatch. And they pick the shapes up and none of the shapes go into the holes because all the shapes are from a different size puzzle. Now, again, this is perfect example of quick perception bias. I see something, yeah, based on my past experience, I believe that I understand what it is. And without any question, I will take action. This is first order thinking. It's absolute perfection. You know, I see something, I believe I understand it. I've done something similar. I've seen something similar. And without saying, okay, I believe that I can do this quickly, but in order for me to do this, are all the pieces there? Are they all for the correct puzzle? Are they all going to go in? We don't ask anything, you know, because our world's busy, our world's noisy, and we like to make decisions that we're comfortable with quickly.
Can I just ask something? Does the
Yes.
reverse then apply for things that they're scared of doing? So if you talk to someone who's not comfortable, so I talk about Boolean a lot, which scares a lot of people,
Yeah.
right? Because they have this pre-built perception that it's hard and it's something they can't do. So what we're talking about here, the second order thinking, does that apply for both the positive I can do and the negative I can't do it? Or is that something completely different?
No, do you know what? That's an absolutely fantastic question. And we tend to apply it to all situations first, yeah, because whatever is causing the immediate pressure, we tend to just try and solve the immediate pressure first, from wherever it's coming from, whatever it is. And we tend to do that by thinking, what's going to get the monkey off my back? What's the quick decision, the quick action I can take to disperse this fear, this anger, this emotion, yeah, this pressure? What can I do, yeah, based on my experience of the world, yeah, to get rid of this right now? Yeah. But what I don't think about is all, you know, all right, I've tipped the first block, that pressure's gone. But what's going to happen at the end? What have I started in motion?
Got you. Perfect. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Yeah, no, fantastic. Yeah. So just to give you like a little example, and I'll relate this to live situations that I've had in the sales world. So I might have a salesperson whose performance is dipping. And I might go to a team leader that's running this person in their team, and I might go, you know, Paul's performance is just going off the cliff at the minute. You know, his performance is dropping. You know, what's going on? You know, what we're going to do? And I tend to get two answers based on how they see getting this immediate monkey off their back. They either say, oh, I'll give them some extra training, yeah, or they say, I'll go put a rocket up them, yeah. And rocket management I mean, it might be dressed ever so slightly nicer than it used to be back in the day, but rocket management is still huge in businesses right now, you know, because people see pressure with creating results. Now, don't get me wrong, pressure creates diamonds, but it also creates coal. Yeah, and if you just apply general pressure, you'll get a lot more coal than you will ever get diamonds. So they think, I'll go put a rocket up them. Because when I put a rocket up somebody, the immediate consequence of me putting a rocket up somebody tends to be a slight peak in their performance. Because this person is now thinking, how do I get this monkey off my back? Yeah. Right, I'm going to have to make some more calls. I'm going to have to just try a little bit harder, however uncomfortable that might be, or however I might feel my skill set isn't up to it. I'm going to have to put more in. The next immediate effect of this is that people starts to feel a huge amount of stress. You know, they're not feeling supported, they're not feeling understood, they're not feeling listened to. They just feel like I've just got to go out there and get this monkey off my back. That stress then leads to sickness within the business, which leads to an increased churn rate, which in turn leads to lost sales and reduced revenue. Because the person now who's my team leader that's got a target based on a 10 full-time equivalent has now got 2 people on sick and 1 person that's left, but they've still got to hit their target. So I go to them now and I say, listen, you know, this target is we've got to find a way to hit this target. So what do? They feel stressed. They go out there and handle it in the way that they feel gets them the best immediate results to relieve that stress. And they put a rocket up everybody. And so the cycle perpetuates and it goes round and round. Now, even if you've got a team leader who would quite often say to me things like, I'll give them some training. So in my last role, for example, I built a call center basically from scratch up to 85 people over 2 sites. These people booked appointments for field sellers to go and sell on. So the typical beta hunter model. So I might have a booker who's why's the word going out of my head? This looks slick, doesn't it? Yeah. Their conversion rate, sorry, has dropped off. Yeah. So I go, you know, why is their conversion rate down? And then there might be a good team leader and they think, well, I don't really know. So I said, so what are you going to do? I'll give them some training. I'll go, fantastic. What are you going to train them on? Oh, well, I go, well, how do you know that's the problem? Because in this situation, these people book for 2 or 3 different people. Now, 2 of the 3 of their sellers might be doing fantastic conversion, and one is dragging that number down. So what are we going to do to this person, who's actually putting good results out there? One person's bringing their numbers down. We're either going to rocket them or we're going to unnecessarily train them. So what I did was I used to get everybody to go through the exact conversion rates for each person with a seller. And if a seller didn't get good conversion rates with one person, we'd move that person. And I called it putting the money with the money. You know, what you want to do, there's no point forcing people together who don't believe in each other. You know, let's find somebody else who they do get on better with, because this is a young booker and there's an old seller with them, and they don't think this young gun can set this up properly, so they don't go in with the right mindset. There's a whole plethora of things, if you go to second order thinking, that can affect your performance. You know, where the first order thinking is, I'll either rocket them or I'll train them. But what's that going to do in the great scheme of things? Now, in my call center, an average call center in the UK churns at 26%. My call center churns at 6.7% because I forced everybody to look at the whole situation of every individual person in a completely different way. You know, we don't just go out and put rockets up people, and we don't train them unless we know why they're training them, what we're trying to actually achieve with the training, and is it going to be beneficial at the other side? Does that kind of make sense? Perfect. So, you know, you can even take this further and you can look at regime change. So how often has the West backed, some sort of militant party to overthrow a government in a country that they didn't like the regime in? Only for that regime, ultimately, to still hate the West, be no better than the regime that was overthrown, and sometimes even worse, but then that country's in turmoil for years. Because even the government has thought about is first order thinking. This regime is making us look bad. This regime is causing us a problem. How do I change that regime? You know, and even for presidents and prime ministers, you know, it's a perfect example of first order thinking, and even an element of quick perception bias. So I suppose if you're looking at the world, you know, your plan is basically the Titanic. And the iceberg is your unforeseen consequences of the blocks that you haven't looked at what's going to happen when they tumble. No, the plan of the Titanic was extremely simple. I want to build an amazing ship, you know, and transport people in luxury across the oceans to New York. You know, the plan was simple, but their arrogance of not being prepared to look past the initial element of that plan meant that hundreds of people died, and they ultimately lost that ship. So in some ways, our ego is the plan, you know, and our inability to look past the end of our ego and our infallibility stops us from hitting the iceberg, which is the real world consequence of what we're doing right now. You know, so you've got to take these situations and you've got to look at them differently. You know? And when I tried to move this into the sales world, I looked at the way that what I call the 3-stage sales training plan that most salespeople tend to get, especially in a call center environment. Stage 1 is, here is your script. Stage 2 is, here is our top 5 objections and what you say when they object to you. Yeah. Stage 3 is, here is your telephone, go and make lots of money. Yeah. And that is a 3-stage sales training plan that so many companies have out there. And there's no reason that these people churn at 30, 40% sometimes. You know, it's very short order thinking. The problem is when people do then get objections that haven't been covered, or they go past the objection and don't take the answer that you've given them to it, it then creates extreme states of stress and flux for the individuals. And the statistics say that only 44% of salespeople will handle more than one objection. So 44% of salespeople will attempt one objection because they've only ever been taught one objection handle, and then they don't move forward with it. Another 14% fail objection number 2. But objection number 2 in reality is just objection number 1 that they haven't moved past. You know, so it becomes uncomfortable because instead of just becoming a conversation, it becomes a headbutting exercise, and they handle it either abrasively or aggressively because they're getting basically frustrated with the situation. So this led me to create what I call second order objection handling. So now when I go train sales teams and when I have to train my own sales teams, so if second order thinking is what's the consequence to my consequence, then second order objection handling is what's the objection handle to my objection handle. Because once you've put it out there, once you've done your objection handle, it's going to go one of two ways. They're either going to accept what you've said and move forward with you in a positive manner, which is what we all hope happens, or you're going to meet immediate resistance again, and they're going to go nowhere, which is where 44% of people immediately fall off the cliff. So how do I do that and move forward and make it conversational? I don't even call my objection handling session objection handling. I talk about it, being about changing perspectives. So my whole session for 3 hours of objection handling is called changing perspectives. It's not called objection handling. Objection is not something you handle. It's just a conversation that you get to flow. And during that conversation, you get to understand their point of view, they get to understand your point of view, and you hopefully change their perspective in the right way. So just a little couple of examples of what I call second order objection handling. So in a situation, you're talking to somebody and they might say, yeah, that sounds great, but I'm not interested, thanks. So you might go, no, listen, I completely understand. In all honesty, I'm not asking you to be interested right now. I'm just asking you to be open to the fact that there may be something better for your business out there than you've currently got. Can I just ask, who are you using for this currently? So I might think that sounds good. I like that. I've applied the 3 principles. I agree. I've acknowledged. I've advanced. As I've moved forward with the question. But not everybody's going to go forward with that. So some people will come back and go, I'm with ABC company, but yeah, I'm just not interested. And then this is when people start to panic. Instead of just being naturally able to move the conversation forward. So then I might say, okay, that's no worries, Paul. Can you just ask though, is the lack of interest because you believe you're on a great deal? Or are you just maybe worried about what the changeover process might look like? So you've got to think, there's 2 reasons that people won't move forward with my proposition in general. It isn't worth their while, or they're worried about what the switchover might look like. So I want to get on top of this early. So I'm going to put a question out there that takes me to these 2 exact things, and then I'm going to handle what their answer to it is. Because one of these 2 things, most of the time, is the reason that they're not prepared to move forward in my conversation. Another quick example is, I'm happy where I am, thanks. So I might go, listen, no, completely understand. If I'm being honest with you, I would say that most people don't move across to us because they're unhappy. Most people move because it makes perfect business sense. So let me ask you, Paul, if I could update your hardware and knock you 20% off your bill at the same time, would that make you happy? Now, some people might say yes, but some people might go, probably not. Because what you're failing to understand here as well, and when this comes up, is the ego state that's involved. So I talk a lot about ego states in training, and the 3 main blocks of ego states that you need to be in to ask the right questions and solicit the right behavior out of people. This sort of thing is just, you get an answer like that, and I know this person's in the wrong ego state. I need to move their ego state before I can sell them anything. So they might say, oh, probably not. I'd just rather stay where I am. So my answer to that might be, okay, that's quite interesting. And as soon as you say the words, that's interesting to another human being, our brain immediately goes, why is that interesting? We now start to think that maybe we're missing something. It's the little things in sales that make the big differences. So I might go, okay, that's quite interesting. And if I'm being honest, the only people that tend to turn down a fantastic deal are people that have had bad switchover experiences. Can I just ask you, have you switched this service before at any point? So again, I'm taking them away from, are you happy? Are you not happy now? And I'm talking about something else that might have happened in their world that I can be assistance with. But what we can't do is just give people one reason to do things, one objection handle. Think only what happens when that first block falls. You've got to think about what happens when the last block falls. In my sales process, too many salespeople get on a call only thinking about the outcome, and how they're going to move past this first stage. When what they should be doing is just getting on a call, having a great conversation with a human being, and seeing if they can genuinely help. And when that last domino falls, what you've got is a grateful client who's happy for the interaction, who's better for knowing you, who will then put you forward to other people that they know. That's the difference between first order and second order in my mind. And that's kind of it for our little whistle-stop tour through second order thinking and second order objection handling. I just wanted to try and put it in a little sort of nutshell, really, that was sort of easy to follow and get your head around. So, any questions?
I've got a few.
Go on.
I'm sure maybe there will be some others as well. But first and foremost, mate, that was quality as expected.
Thank you.
I think not just from a sales perspective, but from a psychological perspective as well. So I suppose the timing of it, we did a session yesterday on limiting beliefs. And I think there's some stuff here as well, which at the end of the day, we're selling to ourselves on our belief. So that second order thinking, I think, could come into that cycle as well. So not just from a sales
100%. You know, confirmation bias, you know, is a problem within us. It's a limiting belief, you know, that because quite often we think we can't go above and beyond, you know, our base experience. So we base our actions on our base experience, you know, because confidence is a lie anyway. You know, I believe confidence is a learned behavior, you know, that we tend to show to the world quite badly. You know, but when we put under pressure in situations that we don't feel confident in, we tend to go to a comfort action. And a comfort action tends to be something that we believe we understand that might get the immediate monkey off our back, you know, but it does revolve hugely around limiting beliefs and the way we see ourselves in our glass ceilings.
Yeah, I love that. Can I ask a specific question then, Andy?
Of course.
I suppose more sales related. So the example that you've used there, and forgive me if my interpretation is wrong. An assumption. So the prospect has given kind of surface level objections, which you do to politely get out of a call.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what you've done there as the example is actually give them a bigger objection. So actually bringing the elephant into the room, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Every time it might not be, I'm not happy, but the example that you've given there is the changeover process. So I'm assuming the example you're giving, maybe the changeover process was always the elephant in the room that 9 times out of 10 was a real objection.
Absolutely.
Am I right in saying that? So
100%, yeah. And when you're looking at hidden objections, the hidden objection is almost always masking that base conversation where they sort of have a conversation, but they're a bit apathetic to it. And it sounds great, Andy, but I'm just kind of happy. You know, all that kind of conversation. A huge amount of the time, that is based on the fear of what happens if I change. Yeah.
So if we were applying this to our own businesses then, so let's say we've got Gabby on. So let's use Gabby as an example, which is probably good timing because hiring a sales rep at the moment and the rest of it. So Gabby's sales rep potentially might get fobbed off with haven't got enough time. We're not looking to invest in new tech at the moment. We're onboarding this technology or we're focusing on this at the moment. Like, would we be right then to say, look, let's get to the real objection, which is the prospect doesn't see this being valuable for them, basically.
Absolutely,
because at the end of the day, you love the product you're selling, particularly if it's your own fucking product as a founder.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're not going to turn around and say, well, I think your product's shit, or I don't think it's valuable to me. So would it be right in saying in here is, let's get past these first objections and then say, listen, let's have a discuss about the potential reasons why you feel that my product isn't valuable right now, because let's be real, that's what's stopping you from going ahead.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's as important for me to understand why you might not want my product as it is for me to understand why you might want my product. You know, it's as important for me to understand why you might not make this decision as it is to understand why you might make this decision. You know, and we all come down to the same boiling pot. You know, we all come down in general, unless you're Virgin or whoever else, you know, we all come down to the boiling pot of apathy and white noise. Now, the problem is the average small business gets 30 to 60 cold call attempts a month, either walking through a door or picking up the telephone. The human being habitualizes everything that we are exposed to. So the more we're exposed to cold calling, the more we habitualize it. And the more they start to believe they understand how to get cold callers off the phone, how to get salespeople that they don't want out of the door. Yeah. And that comes down to then things like their quick perception bias of the situation. It all goes right. It's all cyclical, and it's all based on what we learn. You know, people know what tends to get salespeople off the phone. So you get on the phone, and that's the first thing you hear. Yeah. But you also need to understand the ego state. So the first ego state in any of these cold situations, and even warm to an extent, if it's an inbound, is called parent and child. And the reason it's called parent and child is that when I throw the question out, a lot of sales guys will go, well, obviously, you know, we're the parent because we're educating them, yeah, and they're the child. And I said, you know what, that makes sense, but it's not the answer. Because to start off with, we get on the phone and they talk to us like they're the parent, you know, and we're the impetuous child pulling on the skirt saying, can I have a lollipop, mum? Do you know what I mean? You know, it's like, why are you calling me? Do you think I've got nothing better to do than speak to you people? Did I ask you to call me? If I want this, I'll research it for myself. You know, they talk down to you like you're the child who's just causing a problem in their world and they've got better stuff to do. And you do not sell in parent and child mode. And this is the problem lots of sellers go through. Because logic would dictate, if I'm struggling to get through at the early part of a call, I should just take all my good stuff, yeah, and pile it to the front of the call. So I get on the phone and go, oh, hi, it's Andy from ABC Company. Yeah, I'm just giving you a really quick call because we're working with businesses in the area right now and we're saving an average of 1,000,000%, you know, and we clean your car for you. There's a 3 years free, you know, and we throw all this stuff in, everything we can think of, kitchen sink right up front. And then we pause for breath and they go, I'm all right, thanks. And you've just wasted every good thing. Yeah. The stage one, parent and child, is a non-transactional state. You do not sell in stage one. You survive stage one. And you survive stage one by trying to go into it slightly differently from the other 30, 40, 50 people that are going to cold call them this month. Yeah. And you take them to a place that other people don't take them to. So, I'll give you another really quick example of one that's really, I do a lot of merchant service companies. And if somebody calls somebody up and they don't take card payments, yeah. Now, what I say to people is the journey when you're selling to somebody, the journey is from logic to emotion. Our conversation always starts logically, yeah. Price lives in the logical side of the brain. And if you're trying to get them to make a decision on price only, this is when you will struggle. So the journey when we buy something is the journey from logic to emotion. Emotionally, we'll make decisions very quickly. We'll buy very quickly. Logically, it doesn't work very well. When you're handling objections, it's reversed because I do not want them to feel emotional about the objection. I want them to feel logical about it because it's easier to get past logic than it is to get past emotion. So, for example, they'll call somebody up and they'll go, "Oh yeah, don't take card payments at the minute. Yeah, I'm quite comfortable with that." Yeah. And people's logical question is to go, okay, you know, is there any reason for that? Seems like a fantastically logical question to ask. But I say, you've got to think about what you're asking this person to do. You're asking them to think about all the reasons they don't take card payments, don't want to take card payments, yeah, don't feel comfortable with it, feel the emotion that I've now created, yeah, get them to explain it to me, yeah, while I now will try and battle against them. Whereas if I just said, okay, that's quite interesting, I would imagine, though, like most people that I speak to in your situation, it is on your roadmap, you know, especially with cash being the least popular it's ever been and also very expensive to bank. In fact, can I just ask, do you pay for your business banking at the minute? They're not thinking about, am I interested anymore? They're not thinking about, do I want to take card payments? They're thinking about, do I pay for my business banking? And what have I said in that very short sentence? Yeah, and again, even things like understanding that the human attention span in the last 15 years has gone from 12.5 seconds to 8.5 seconds. So when I'm starting off with person, I should never say anything that lasts for more than 8.5 seconds, because even if they're reasonably interested, yeah, they're going to start to drift. So just understanding the whole psyche of how people work, how people have moved forward, you know, how the brain's changed to deal with noise and apathy and cold callers. But if I say to you, that's quite interesting, immediately your brain goes, why is that interesting? And then I say to you, I would imagine like most people that I speak to in your situation, I've now told you I'm an expert. I deal with this all the time. I know how it works. I know the best way to move forward with it. And you plant these little things because self-realization is the biggest realization of all. And if they just decide this is a great idea, I want it because I've decided, then they're only battling them. They're not battling me anymore. So just these little changes in how you approach a conversation with a human being in the 21st century, people are still teaching you to sell like the way that people sold 20, 30 years ago. You still hear the same objection handles being taught to 20, 30 years ago. By 2025, 75% of all businesses are going to be run or managed by millennials. Yeah, nobody thinks about how does a millennial buy? You know, how should I be talking to millennials right now? How do they see the world? You know, we just go on this archaic objection handle that's been going around because I got taught this 20 years ago. It worked for me. It'll work for you. But it doesn't. That's first order thinking. Second order thinking is, you know, how do I get all the blocks to topple the way that I want them to topple? And in order to do that, I've got to battle my limiting self-beliefs. I've got to battle my glass ceilings. I've got to battle the historic things that have got me to where I am. And I've got to be open-minded to the fact that this world is run by people that see it differently. Does that make sense? That was kind of a long answer to your question.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. I've been making some good notes there, and I suppose my takeaway there is, if I was handling an objection now after what you've said there, Andy, and you really made me think, mate, you really have. If someone gave me a surface level objection, it would be, I'd probably come back and nick you. Well, that's really interesting. Because most people's objection is actually this massive one that's bigger than the one you've just given me.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. But it's all about moving forward. It's all about buying your blocks of time, you know. Because again, you know, if you look at objections, they tend to come in an order, you know. And again, this is like a much bigger session, but when it comes to objections, you tend to get what we call a false objection first, which is just something to get you off the phone. And a lot of the time, I'll say to my sales guys, don't make it into an objection. Yeah, just breeze past it. Oh, no, yeah, I'm just happy where I am, thanks. Oh, fantastic. And who are you using for this at the minute? Because the brain doesn't defend anything that isn't real, we can't bring ourselves to defend things that aren't real. If it isn't real, they will just carry on talking. If it is real, if what they've said to you is a real objection, like I haven't got time, you know, I will always stress test the fact that have they got time or haven't they? You know, I won't just take it as read. So I might go, listen, completely understand. Obviously, you know, it's always difficult with time when you're running your own business and everything else. But just very quickly, while I have got you on the phone, yeah, and I'll ask them a question. So I've told them I understand, yeah, I've heard you, you know, but very quickly while I've got you on the phone, I'll ask them a question. If they just keep talking and the conversation moves forward, that wasn't real. If they've got a shop full of people, they're going to come back and say, I'm really sorry, Andy, you know, I just can't talk right now. If it comes back, the brain's defended it, it's based in some form of reality. You know, so we get false, then we get initial, which we sometimes call premature objections because it's too early to know what they're objecting to. And then as you move through, we start to take things like information as an objection or pleas for clarity as an objection, which is why the situation becomes uncomfortable, because we're not understanding how it works. And when it comes to objections, and we've kind of drifted off the path a bit, but I always say to people, you know, as soon as you learn to use objections as a wayfinder in your journey, a way to keep on track, instead of just something you don't want to have, you will become successful as a salesperson. And I talk about the 160 rule that pilots have. You know, if I take off my plane and I'm 1 degree off course, it makes no difference whatsoever. You know, if I carry on that for a few seconds or a minute, it really doesn't have much of an effect. But for every hour I fly, starting from 1 degree off course, I'm 60 miles away from where I want to be. So how do I sense check that I'm not just going off on one path and they're going off on another path, and these paths are never going to come together? Their objections, which helps you to understand their ego state and everything that's sitting behind it, is a fantastic way to judge. But with that scared of objections and actually getting them, that all we do is battle against them. And it becomes really uncomfortable. And that's why there's 5 objections in an average sale. 60% of salespeople have gone by objection number 2.
Well, this reframe of objection handling to perspective changing, because that just sounds a lot more like a conversation than an argument.
100%. And that's the whole point I'm trying to make, you know, that, you know, what people do is I'm going to handle that objection. Well, by the very nature of saying I'm going to handle that objection, you know, coats off, get in the car park, we'll sort this out. No, that's not how you handle an objection. Yeah, this is either something that is real or not real in somebody's mind. First thing you've got to do is figure out, is it real or is it not real? Yeah, and then you've got to think, is it based on fact? Is it based on opinion, or is it based on bias? Because if it's factual, I can't handle it fluffily. I've got to handle their objection factually. If it's based on opinion, I've then got to make sure I understand why they've formed that opinion, but then how I can change that opinion. And then if it's based on a bias, that's usually, a bias is normally based on our experiences. So what have you experienced that's making you now have that opinion? You know, so there's so much more goes into the interaction with people than just when they say they're not happy, you go, oh, I won't expect you to be happy. I've not explained how brilliant we are yet. That's what people were saying 30 years ago, mate. You know, the world's moved on.
Interesting.
And reframing is, again, a whole new conversation. You know, and I always say most people's that are hanging, pictures that are hanging in people's rooms would not be hanging there if the frame was shit. Yeah. People don't buy pictures if the frame's shit. People don't buy questions if the frame is shit. It's exactly the same concept. It has to be palatable. We have to believe that we're comfortable with it, we like it, yeah, and we can accept it in our world. Bad frame doesn't go anywhere.
I'm interested to know what the other two ego states are that you mentioned. You said there were three, and one's
there is three. Yeah. So the three ego states that I talk about in cold calling interactions are parent and child, yeah, which we have to survive. Yeah. The next is called on the level. On the level doesn't mean we're best friends. It doesn't mean that they're going to buy anything from me, but it means that they've accepted that I seem to be a nice guy. I seem to be there for the right reasons. I seem to be there for them, not me. And I seem to know what I'm talking about. So they've now accepted the fact that I'm an adult, yeah, that they're prepared to have a bit of a conversation with. Might not change their mind on anything right now, but they're prepared to have a conversation with me rather than just find a way to dismiss me. So we call that on the level, yeah. And this is where we do our fact find. This is where we start to plant our seeds and move forward through the process. The last level is called trusted advisor. And all trusted advisor is parent and child in reverse. I've gone from being the person who's getting educated by this person who's telling me why they don't want this, why they're not going to move forward, to telling them now why, as I understand your business needs, you know, this would work really well for this. This is going to help in this situation. This is going to get this done for you. You know, I'm now the trusted advisor explaining why this is a great idea, rather than them just being the parent telling me why it's a crap idea. And you have to move through those blocks. And I talk about in the training, I talk about each of those blocks because there's a question in each of those blocks you've got to answer, you know, and there's different elements of it. And if you don't handle the elements of each block, you won't move to the next block. You know, and I talk about, and I put a picture of Jeremy Clarkson up and I talk and I say, and this is how we normally handle it. And just like I said earlier in the conversation, we think logic dictates. If they're not interested, I just put all the good stuff up front. Yeah. And there's a picture of Jeremy Clarkson with G-force in a plane. And I just go, you go full throttle, you throw the kitchen sink at them early because you think once I tell them all this amazing stuff, yeah, they're going to go, that's amazing. When can you come in? But if they're in parent and child, it's a non-receptive ego state. And all they're hearing is blah, blah, blah. Stop talking so I can get rid of you like I get rid of everybody else. You know, so it's that, you know, they're only looking at, I need to topple the first block. When the first block doesn't fall, they can't think about what the second block should look like. It's all first order thinking, handle that immediate thing.
I think those ego states, Andy, are really, really important, just from a wider perspective as well. And I'm thinking of examples recently. So we talk a lot about personal brand and marketing and everything else as well. And ultimately, if we think about those ego states, we're trying to position ourselves as a trusted advisor before we even start a sales conversation.
Yeah.
It's interesting that recently, a week ago, someone was in my head as a trusted advisor because of the content and the personal brand stuff. And actually, as soon as I got on the phone, it quickly went back down the ego states.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He didn't know what he was talking about. So
yeah.
Someone else was writing his content for him or whatever. Yeah. Or he was actually really good at content marketing and actually shit out the thing he was selling. So it's those ego states are really, it's just a simple way to put it and to understand it well. So it's great stuff like that, mate.
And you fit on something really interesting there for me. So it's like, you know, I'm not important enough to be put in this world to judge anybody. You know, I'm a complete live and let live. You know, I'm just a poor little dyslexic boy from the council estates of Leeds who left with no qualifications and started packing fish gates for a living because it's the only job I could get. You know, there's nothing important about me, but I have problems with things like 12-year-old life advisors, you know, So they come straight out of college, and now they're there telling you how to run your life. I'm sorry, but I would rather somebody with a bit of experience come and tell me how to run my life. But because of slick marketing and because of social selling, and 65% of millennials say social selling is hugely important to their decision making. So we are much more highly influenced by social selling now than we've ever been before, obviously. So when I do things, I say to people, listen, I don't expect you to believe I'm any good at all. Yeah. What I'm saying to you is, let me come and show you that I'm any good, because talk is cheap in my world. We've all been put in front of so many trainers and they turn up and they give you the same old crap that the last people, it's just so corporate that you got 20 minutes trying to get a stick out your ass to learn to talk properly again when you come out. So I say, let me come into your business. Let me do a 90-minute psychology-based sales session, that can put 10 to 20% in 90 minutes onto your sales team's performance, and I'll do it for free. After that, if you don't think it's the best sales training you've ever seen, don't pick up the phone and talk to me. Because we all get fooled into this slick marketing and people telling you how good they are. If people are that good, they'd be prepared to show you.
But if you put both of them together, I think you're winning.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Unfortunately, I'm not very good at the other side. So, I'm the wrong generation for a huge amount of social selling and slick marketing. But, what I do is, I've got a wealth of life experience that I know has got me to grow fantastic teams, businesses of my own, and whilst I will never be confident, because that 7-year-old little boy that lives inside me that fears everything that the world's going to do to me today is always going to be there. I am prepared to know that what I have done has been so successful. I'm happy to show you that if you work with me, some of that success will rub off.
Yeah, well, you should be confident, mate, because this has been a cracking session. Obviously, we had a conversation, and I was keen to get you on and share some insights with the guys. Like, you should be confident. That was absolutely class. There was some really good stuff there.
Thank you.
Honestly, really, really good. And it's so interesting, like listening to you speak. Do you know when you do things because you're just doing it?
Yeah.
To hear what you were talking about and go, okay, I do that well, actually miss the drop or drop something on that, or I've heard someone say it. Like, even now when you talk about those ego states, it's really interesting. Like, although we're talking about it from a cold calling position, if you take that into a customer success position, when you've got someone running at you who's angry, their ego state is here with parent-child. They do not want you to lecture them. How do you take them through those egos to go, right, I'm back in control? And I used to do that in banking, right? You have hedge funds manager, like, I don't know if you've ever met hedge fund guys. They are plonkers to the nth degree.
I've met a hedgehog. Yeah, not a
hedgehog. I'd rather have a fight with a hedgehog than a hedgehog. Honestly, they're so rude. They're so arrogant. Their position's right. They will talk to you like rubbish. And actually, interesting, handling them through those ego frameworks and actually how you would in a cold call diffuses it and moves them through. So it goes all the way from objection handling to conflict resolution to customer success, all the way through. If you keep going back through these egos, you've actually pretty much got them on team all the way through that journey. So it's been really fascinating, Andy.
Awesome. So and again, the thing that it took me a long time to sort of really understand was, the people that tend to talk to you like that tend to have the biggest insecurities. It tends to come from insecurity. The people that tell you that go around and tell you, oh, I'm so confident, they're the people with the biggest voices. And it took me a long time in life to learn that. You saw me in my mid to late 20s, and I wanted you to think I'm the most confident person on the planet, I'm great at this, but the reality is now I'm more comfortable with myself in the world. I'm happy to say that, I'm probably one of the least confident people you will ever meet. I fear everything that the world's going to do to me, but I know that if I let that fear take over, I'm not going to pay the bills. I'm not going to feed my family. Nothing's going to happen. This is a one-time opportunity to make the best life that I can make, and fear is not going to allow me to do that.
But I think that's what's quite interesting, because like I completely agree. Like you hear, like I'm very confident, right? I'll talk to anyone. I don't really have a lot of boundaries and that stuff, but it doesn't come naturally.
No,
there are some days where I just sit there and go, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I don't have this. I don't want to do it. But what's interesting with that parent-child dynamic is when I've had confrontations with individuals because they're on ego zone, like massive shoulders back, I'm right, you're wrong. I've shifted the parent-child. I actually turned around to them and it was pretty bold. I think my MD nearly sacked me on the spot. I was like, would you talk to your mum like that? called it.
Yeah.
I was like, you're out of line, pack
Yeah.
it in. You're bringing too much heat to this table. I don't want to play with you.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes when you're dealing with people who are that and they're in this ego mode of I'm right, you're wrong, sometimes it is okay to jump to the last ego and actually go, I'm authority here, sit down and play nicely.
Yeah.
But you have to have the confidence to lean in and just keep finding your confidence to keep going. And I like the aspiration, right? You've got one life to live, run at it, own it. People are going to come on that journey to support you. So you're rocking it. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I completely.
Talking about this, these different ego states ties in really nicely to a session we had the other day, actually, about transparency selling, which is just, I guess, one way that you can really quickly get to that trusted advisor state where you're being completely transparent to the point where now I want to ask you for your advice in this. Yeah, it's super interesting, Andy. Really, really good.
Oh, well, I'm pleased that because I put that together yesterday and I thought, and then the little 7-year-old boy in my head started going, nobody's going to want to hear that. Yeah, so
you need to tell him to sit down.
Sit
in the corner and be quiet.
Yeah, so I've read the chimp paradox. I give it virtual bananas. I do all sorts of it. But yeah, it eats them quickly and then just carries on.
Yeah, that was top notch, Andy, mate. Really good. I think very genuine, a lot of passion, and loads of gold in there. I think the bit about the ego state of being on the level with them, mindset and self-esteem are big on calls, aren't they? You know, your perception of your own value and what you bring to the table coming into the call, I always find pretty key.
Yeah.
You already think you're below the prospects. You're a loser already, aren't you?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Ultimately, whilst confidence may be a lie, they're using your confidence in you, your product, your service, and your company. They're using your certainty to reach their certainty. You know, so what you're saying is completely right. If they don't feel that certainty, you know, and pushing this isn't certainty, you know, but if they don't feel that certainty, they're never going to reach certainty, because if you don't believe it, they're never going to believe it. You know, and if you don't really believe it's right for them, they're never going to believe it's right for them.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, thanks, mate. Really appreciate that.
No bother. It's been a pleasure.
I've just realised the time, Andy. It's absolutely flown by, which is a good indication as well, mate. But listen, some of these guys will be catching up on this on demand afterwards. So I think you've got a lot of value to add in the sales training world, mate, which I know you are already.
Thank you.
But, you've admitted you could probably do a little bit more self-promotion on the marketing front as well. So if you ever need any help with that, there's loads of people here that can maybe help you out. I'm willing to help you as well, mate, because I think you've got loads of value to add, and obviously a hell of a lot of experience over the years that I actually feel is missing in this day and age, because everyone's gone so. Like, I'm a big believer in social media, you know I am, but everyone's gone so much social selling. Sometimes we're forgetting the basics, and ultimately, if we're selling something that's a high ticket, and which we all are, then we need to be selling. We need to be on the phones. We need to be doing this stuff, and I think it's a bit of a lost art, mate. So I think you've got loads of value, not just to add to our network, but to more people out there. So where can people find you, mate, if they need to do so?
So if you want to email me, it's info. I'll put the next slide up. There we go. It's info@andyscotttrainingsolutions.com. So I'm also I'm on every format, just not as active as I should be on every format. But yeah, if people want to reach out to me and drop me an email, info@andyscotttrainingsolutions.com, or a lot of people just DM me on LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. I like to put little bits and pieces out on there and get some likes, so I feel like I can have a pat on the back for the weekend.
Good man. Well, there's plenty of stuff you could be sharing on there, I'm sure, mate, from today's insights. So massively grateful for that. Let's have a bit of a catch up as well, Andy, because I really enjoyed that. And
Awesome. Yeah, can I show you one thing really quickly just before I go?
Yeah, well, as long as it's not anything rude, mate, then yeah.
It's definitely not. No, it's just talking about this growth. You know, and the interesting stat for you: most salespeople have purchased one book on sales psychology, people behavior, but never finished it. But they want to go out there and earn £100,000 a year. So I'm a lifelong learner. So I've got 2 books. So whenever I'm reading, I don't know where you can see it. Whenever I'm reading a book, an audio book, a blog, whatever. I might do a 12-hour book to get one thing that I like, one thought process, one element, one training idea, and they go into these books. And then when I'm doing talks, when I'm doing training sessions, when I'm doing articles. I go back through these books. There's hundreds of things in here, all about like everything from management to thought processes to anything that you can think of that's about psychology, people, management, business, growth, you know, and I just put the elements down in here, you know, and I just think if you are not out there growing, you know, then you're not doing anything. You know, what's going to take you to the next level? Because doing the same thing over and over, having the same thoughts over and over is not going to do it.
I want a copy of that book, Andy.
It's what?
I want a copy of that book. Don't make me read all these books. Do me a favor, wing it over. Come on.
To be fair, sometimes I will do it like an 11-hour audio book to hear one thing that I've not heard before somewhere. But the difference now is I will class that as time well spent. Because if I've learned something that I didn't know before that I think can make me better, as not just as a sales trainer, as a human being, you know, then that's got to be worthwhile. Honestly,
that book is like, that'd be worth a fortune. I would pay to not have to read all those books and read your book. And I'm a fellow dyslexic, so reading is not my vibe. I'm
you'd have to pay me to read it to you. Yeah, because you won't be able to read it. Yeah.
I need you to just feed it to my brain and then I'll go and action.
So I just thought I'd show you that just because it kind of went in with the growth and self-learning thing that we were talking about. You know, it's a journey, you know, make the most of it and upskill yourself to the best ability to take it on.
Love that, mate.
It's been a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Andy.
Yeah, no, thank you, mate. That's been amazing. And don't tell anyone your address, otherwise they're going to come and get Andy's.
Yeah, they won't want my watch. Yeah, they want my book. Yeah.